Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the GBF September 10th retreat with René, Rivera. We're very fortunate to have him here today and to be here in person and online. So I'll introduce René, and then I'll turn it over to him, and he'll facilitate the day and describe our schedule and things like that. So our teacher today is René Rivera. He, him, is a leader and bridge builder, working and learning in all the spaces in between race, gender, and other perceived binaries as a queer, mixed race, trans man. He teaches heart-centered, trauma-informed meditation and mindfulness practice at East Bay Meditation Center and elsewhere. His path to spiritual leadership has included the Commit to Dharma and Practice in Action programs at EBMC and the Community Dharma Leaders program at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He works with the Ahimsa Collective as a restorative justice facilitator.
So, just really glad to be here with you all. Really appreciate the invitation to come and spend a little bit of a longer period of practice and Dharma sharing with this community. And so welcoming everyone who's here in this space, welcoming everyone who's joining on Zoom. And thank you so much, Jeff, for that introduction. Yeah, and I'll say just a little bit more about myself and my own path to sharing the Dharma. I've been part of the East Bay Meditation Center community for maybe 14, 15 years now, and that is really the place I consider my spiritual home. And Larry Yang, who's one of the founders of EBMC, has been a very important teacher for me. And I also want to mention Irina Weissman, who was really my Dharma gate. My first day long was at Spirit Rock with Irina. It was an LGBT day long, and that, the friend invited me to, and I could just feel right away that this was a door I could enter into the Dharma. This arena's like queer, politicized version of the Dharma was very accessible to me at that time. And so much gratitude for my teachers, and I also want to mention Aaron Treat, who's guiding teacher at Durango Dharma Center and Vallecitos, who's now my mentor, mentor and teacher. And I really, I came to the Dharma because I was suffering, in particular with a lot of anxiety, and of course the practice doesn't cure that, but it gave me so many tools to manage and shift my relationship to what was happening inside of me that brought me so much motivation to continue to practice. And from the very beginning, one of the core pieces of my practice has been the Brahma Vihara practice, and particularly loving kindness. And I found it to be such a powerful tool of transformation in my life. And now my life is oriented between teaching and doing restorative justice work, where I hold people in their conflict, harm, moving through healing, apology, etc. And both of those things are really oriented for me around how do we reduce fear and violence in our world. Like I feel like I hold out that bodhisattva vision of when we may all come to a place where we would be free of suffering, free of fear and violence. And both of these paths are places where I feel like I can help in small ways on that, in realizing that vision. And the teaching piece for me is really about like sharing the ways that I have found to be less harsh and less violent with myself, and seeing how that ripples out. As I'm less harming to myself, I find I can do less harm in the world, and so that is really what is most alive for me in helping others to also cultivate this place of kindness and maybe not non-harming, but creating a little bit less harm. As my teacher, Larry Yang, I have to paraphrase, I don't remember the exact words, he says, he makes this prayer for himself, may I be loving and kind. If I cannot be loving and kind in this moment, may I be non-judgmental. If I cannot be non-judgmental, may I at least not cause harm. And if I cannot not cause harm, may I cause the least harm possible. So just being even gentle with ourselves in our process of moving towards that, like our bodhisattva path of ending the suffering of ourselves and others. So I'll be talking more about all of these things today, but I just wanted to share that as my own ground and as a teacher and on my own path. So a little bit about how this day will go. I'm really interested in coming together with you as a community, and the topic that we came up with for today is really cultivating the heart of peace in really difficult times. And these are really difficult times. And so as a way of kind of moving through that as a community in practice, I'm going to be organizing our day actually around the Brahma Viharas and bringing in loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, just to have the structure arc to our day. So with each of those, I'll be doing a little bit of Dharma sharing. We'll have a couple of dyad practices where we'll actually get to do some practice with the Brahma Viharas with each other in community. I'll be doing some guided practices to, cultivating our individual practice with these qualities. And then we'll also have some large group sharing. So we'll be kind of moving between those pieces. Me doing some sharing, doing some guided practice, doing some sharing with each other, and then sharing in a large group. So we'll take a lunch break around 12:15. Somewhere in the morning we'll have a sort of a movement break, and also in the afternoon. And at any time, please take care of yourself. So, if you need to get out, attend to anything, get water, go to the bathroom, please take care of yourself for folks on Zoom and here, as we cultivate kindness towards ourselves. That is, for me, always one of the foundations. Can I really be kind to myself in this moment? Do what I need to do to be more comfortable, to take care of any needs that I have that are coming up. Yeah, and so just to say, I'll kind of, in finishing the day with the talk around equanimity, that'll be a place where we'll really kind of come back to this piece of how are these practices supporting us in meeting this moment. Yeah, so as we get started, I want to really appreciate and acknowledge the land that we're on here on Ramatish Ohlone territory. Just taking a moment to acknowledge the relationship between people in the land that goes back for millennia, tens of thousands of years in this place, and that we continue to be in relationship here with the land, in practicing in this place, bringing our practice here, offering our practice, and that we may be in other relationships of offering, of giving and receiving with the land, caring for it, and possibly, caring for the relationship with those who have been in relationship, the indigenous people here. And I know in the East Bay we have the Confederated Tribes of Lejeune and in the East Bay that are really starting to organize to rematriate the land. I don't know if there's anything equivalent here on this side of the bay, but the Segura Te Land Trust in Oakland is a place where we can be in a relationship of support with the tribes who are working to restore relationship. And I also want to acknowledge, as we get started, our lineage, this precious lineage of the Dharma that goes all the way back to the Buddha, that's been carried for 2,600 years through this, what we're doing right here, sharing the Dharma, and coming and practicing together, and supporting the Dharma through our generosity. So just acknowledging that this lineage is here, it's alive, it's ever-changing, and it also has its roots in specific Asian cultures and in a pathway that traces from teacher to student, all the way back to the Buddha. One of the pieces I want to bring in as we're together doing some sharing today is the agreements for multicultural interaction that we use at the East Bay Meditation Center. At the East Bay Meditation Center, as we've been practicing now for 16 years or so, we've been using some agreements that really help us just like I think of them as trainings, kind of like the precepts. We take on these trainings in order to be in community together. And so I'll just do a brief kind of sound bites of our agreements, and maybe I can share them as a follow-up, the link. So one of the agreements is try it on. So just being willing to try on new ideas. Including those that may be unfamiliar or not what we prefer. The next one is practicing self-focus. So we really attend to and speak from our own experience and not make assumptions about others. The next one is understanding the difference between intent and impact. So just knowing that we often come with very good intentions and still sometimes there's an impact or an ouch that happens, and in that moment, can we turn towards what this other person's experience may have been around that impact, as opposed to really staying focused within, this was my intention. Sometimes when we stay with that, the other person can feel like their experience, there's not really room for their experience of how it actually landed. So this difference between intent and impact, it's one of those places kind of like where we can open up a little space as kind of a mindfulness practice around communication. The next one is practicing both and. So this can also be like a simple mindfulness practice. Can I notice when I'm saying like but versus and, when I'm saying, oh, like it may be like I hear what you're saying, but this is my view. Could we say, oh, I hear what you're saying, and this is my view? Just like noticing that subtle difference of using and. The next one is refraining from blaming or shaming others or ourself. And this is one where I particularly notice it comes up as something I do towards myself. The next is move up, move back. This is really like noticing the space that we take up in groups and notice and bringing our mindfulness to that. How much space am I taking up here? Am I someone who often shares a lot? Maybe I want to challenge myself to listen, or maybe I'm someone who often sits back and listens. Maybe I want to challenge myself to speak up. The next is practice mindful listening. Just, again, it's like listening from the heart, not moving into planning our next thing that we're going to say, but really bringing our full attention to the person who's speaking. The next is confidentiality, and often we say, take home your learning, but leave the details here of what someone might have shared with you. And finally, right to pass. So with everything, there's always the right to pass. That includes when we might do diads, it's always the option just to stay in silence or practice on your own. So there's a lot to just deliver verbally. I'm curious, for anyone on Zoom or here, is there one that particularly jumps out to you as something like that particularly lands with resonance for you as something that maybe you want to really try on as a practice, or that you have been practicing with? Just curious if there's any that are particularly resonant. And I know it's hard because I just gave them to you verbally.
Well, I noticed this morning when I looked at this slide that the agreement, notice, intent, and effect had a new meaning for me. I used to hear it as perhaps not speaking the truth for fear of hurting someone. But I hear it now as do it with empathy, with kindness, and ask yourself the rules of speech. Is it truthful? Is it timely? Is it helpful? Those kinds of things.
Great. Yeah. Anyone else have one that's particularly alive for you?
Well, just adding on to what Jeff has said, acknowledging the truth, it's still one's own vision that you're sharing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like having that intent that you're mentioning of just sharing my perception of what the truth is, and the utilization of and. So no boundary ever is set up with but. The other thing I liked was it reminded me of square dancing. There's a step called a balance step, where I won't be able to make the calls, but there's a point where you make a movement and you may be in a circle, and then you step forward and step back, so you balance. So it's that balance that you're still in communion or in touch, but you're in balance with everybody else. So it's like a physical sense.
Yeah. I love that. I hadn't really thought of how do we make these a little bit more queer? And I feel like you just did that.
Oh, dance, right?
Yes. That's perfect. Jess.
Yeah, well, also with that instruction too is sort of recognizing that all of the associations that I have in what I'm saying may not be the same associations that somebody has who is hearing what I'm saying, and that they are receiving it not quite differently from what I intended. So that brings in the other thing of listening carefully and trying to read people's reactions to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, Okay. Lee.
So the discussion about how to behave in groups is relevant for me, and it's not talking so much. A long time ago, I took Erhard's seminar training, which was somewhat useful, and 2 workshops, and it was there that somehow not for other people were being trained to speak up. For me, it was about being quiet, and I still speak up a lot, but at least I have learned to keep it short.
Yes, and again, it's the dance, right? It's that, like, balancing, and yes, I love this dance metaphor. And thank you, Lee. All right, so the other thing I want to just acknowledge before we move into our day is that I, too, may make mistakes up here, and I really invite your feedback. And I don't know if there's like a way that you gather feedback afterwards in terms of like a survey or evaluation or anything like that. But I just want to like say, if there's something that comes up that I say that may be kind of keeping you from being fully present, maybe that lands for you with an impact, I definitely want to know that so I can attend to it, because I want everyone to be able to be here as your full selves. So it's not an interruption if there's something that I say that's been made you uncomfortable in any way, or there's an impact there. You invite hands, even, as we're not during the meditation, but at other times if there is something that is like, oh, actually it needs attention. And then also you can catch me during the break or afterwards. I also want to make sure that, my email is available after this day. So if there's any feedback that you have for me, it's really a gift for me as a teacher as I learn how to hold space with care. All right, that is our container setting. We are in the day, in our half-day retreat, and I want to invite us into just a little bit of silent practice before we start into our sharing practice. So just inviting everyone to settle in to your own experience, taking a moment to land in our sensations. This may be taking a moment to notice the next breath, the next few breaths, sort of follow the breath. It may be tuning into our connection to the earth, feeling the contact of our body resting in a chair or cushion. You may also tune into more external sensations. Could be hearing, sight. All of these are great ways to anchor ourselves in the present moment. Anchor ourselves in our own moment-to-moment experience. So I invite you to pick an anchor in your sensations, and we'll practice for just a little bit in silence together. And I'll ring the bell to begin and end. Just noticing how is it to be in this practice this first practice period of our day together. Might not be our first practice of the day, but just noticing how is it. If there may be distraction in the mind, in the body, in the heart. Just holding that with gentleness and inviting ourselves back to our anchor, just as we would invite maybe a child to come back to the book that we're reading or the meal that we're eating. Come back. Here's what we're attending to right now, this present moment. As we come towards the end of this first practice period, I just invite you to offer yourself a little bit of appreciation, maybe appreciating what it took to get you here this morning, whatever that journey has been. Traveling to here to Bartlett Street, getting ourselves on Zoom, getting ourselves up, and turning towards practice. Knowing with all the goodness that comes with practice, sometimes it's still hard to get ourselves to practice. And can we offer ourselves some appreciation and gratitude for our efforts in coming to practice? And also offering appreciation or gratitude for anyone else who's supporting us to be able to practice today. To be able to take this time out of our lives, to be in practice and to be in community. And we may also want to extend some gratitude, some appreciation to everyone who's shown up here today so that we can practice in community, feeling the support of spiritual friends, companions, Sangha on this path of practice. Thank you all for your practice. So I just want to set a little bit of the context for our practice today. I was recently here, maybe in the spring, I don't remember when it was, talking about how we practice around conflict, inner and outer conflict, attending to the experience of being in a world at war, a world where there's so much conflict everywhere, and also noticing that that's inside of ourselves, and how can we bring our attention, our practice, to making peace inside of ourselves. The world, we can do what we can to try to make peace in the world. That's mostly out of our hands, mostly something that we can only attend to little bits and pieces. If the world's on fire, we can just attend to a few little sparks and embers here and there, but in our own hearts, we can really bring our attention to how do we make peace inside of ourselves. And so that's really what I'm interested in, kind of launching from that conversation into like, how do we actually practice together? How do we practice with ourselves this piece of maybe helping to bring the calming rains that will quiet the fires inside of us. And also, how do we attend to our kind of immediate relationships where, again, these fires of conflict might arise. Sometimes, even within Sangha and community. Not necessarily saying that's something that's happening here in this community, but I know it's happening in my community, it's happening in so many communities. I feel like that's a place where we can really also turn our attention. How can we bring the calming rains to those fires as well? From our own, I think of just how can I do it from my side of the street? I can't control the other side of the street, but at least on my side of the street, can I be in integrity in how I am attending to conflicts that arise in my friendships and my intimate relationships in community. So just to attend to that, what I'd like to do today is explore the Brahma Viharas. And they're very much a part of my own practice of doing less harm to myself and others. And I also am thinking of it as how do we keep our hearts open and soft in these times where so much is raging around us and so much is changing around us and there's so much loss. Really also, noticing for myself how much grief is present right now at so many things that are changing in our world, losing beloved family members and friends, and the loss that's happening within our climate, that's happening within our democracy, just noticing there's so much there to attend to. So, I often think of this, there's a really favorite author of mine, Tom Spanbauer, has a book called In the City of Shy Hunters that's about the AIDS crisis in New York City in the 80s. And this young protagonist who's moving to New York City, his intention is, how do I keep my heart open in hell? At this time when our entire community is hit with this plague. And so just that phrase, how do I keep my heart open in hell, has been one that's stuck with me for, maybe that book came out 20 years ago. Has always stuck with me, and I feel like this is part of my practice, is this practice of keeping the heart soft and open, even in the very hardest of times. And these times are so hard, and I just want to acknowledge this is not our first rodeo. We have been through such hard times before as a community. And here we are again, and it's, I know I feel it within my lifetime, though I was a high school student during the AIDS crisis. I know for many of us we were losing loved ones and our whole community, and so I want to acknowledge that the changes and the loss that's happening now is just not unique in our lifetime. It's different, but it's just want to acknowledge the pain of this repeated history of loss and crisis and apocalypse. How do we actually do this? one way that I think about our practice of Brahma Viharas within our lineage is that the Brahma Vihara practices give us a way to meet the world. So sometimes I use the metaphor of a boat, which I have learned from other teachers, is this idea that these 4 divine abodes or heart practices of the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, are like this vehicle taking us through the world, this boat. So as we're in the boat, you can think of the prow of the boat being loving kindness. This intention to just meet the world, meet whatever we come upon with friendliness, kindness, as much as is possible. And then, as we're moving through the water, meeting it with kindness as much as is possible, we might encounter suffering. And with that intention of kindness, of friendliness, there's an arising of compassion. Our hearts will move naturally to compassion as we meet the suffering of our own suffering or the suffering of others with this wanting to be a companion, wanting to be present for our own suffering and the suffering of others. So that's the arising of compassion. And so that can be like one oar of the boat. And then as we're moving again through the ocean with our intention towards kindness and friendliness, we may meet the joy of others. And so then there's an arising of sympathetic joy, the joy that is sparked by the joy of others. And so that's like the other oar of the boat. And then as we're moving, intentions towards kindness, compassion arising, sympathetic joy arising, as we meet all of the joys and the sorrows of the world and our own experience, the sort of the rudder of the boat then is equanimity. It is the place where we're finding balance within all of these experiences. And so I kind of think of the equanimity as being the fruit of the other 3 practices as well. As we practice with loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, we have more and more capacity to be with the joys and the sorrows of our experience. And we have more balance within that. And it's not about a kind of detachment from the world. And quite the opposite. Equanimity comes out of full engagement with the world. So I want to take us through those practices today and kind of land in this question of equanimity and how it can help us navigate these times that we're in. It's very challenging times. I was just talking with a friend about the Brahma Viharas, and they were sharing a conversation they had with one of the nuns at the Vihara that they serve at. And they said they came to the nun with this question of like, well, what about Buddhist extremism? Like, are there also Buddhist extremists, And the nun said, yes, well, we have, in places like Myanmar where we see oppression of Muslim people, yes, there can be Buddhist extremists. But then the nun said, but also the truly extreme practice in Buddhism is the Brahma Viharas. And I just love that think of like, this is like Brahma Viharas as this, I think of it more as a really radical practice in our tradition. And I think sometimes the Brahma Viharas kind of get pigeonholed a bit, like we're going to go to a Metta retreat, that's kind of the heart practices, something kind of soft and squishy over here as we're working on our concentration or whatever it may be. That's the serious business of Vipassana meditation. For me, the Brahma Viharas are really at the core. They're at the heart of my practice and have been for most of the time that I've been practicing. And I feel like it brings this radical approach to myself and to my relationships and to the world of, can I meet everything with this kindness and friendliness? And I think the Dalai Lama has said, my religion is kindness. And I think he's speaking to this radical element of Buddhism, of really cultivating the kindness and friendliness in our hearts and using it to meet everything, which isn't to say that we don't also have our moments of anger, of rage, of judgment, of all of these things, and then can we meet those also with kindness, not pushing even that away. So I feel like this is a pretty radical practice. And the other thing I've been noticing lately as I work with different people who've have caused harm or trying to cause less harm in the world, I notice over and over how much the harm that people cause is rooted in their own relationship with themselves, in the ways that they're relating to themselves with hatred, judgment, and harm. And then the harm that bounces out to other people is almost a byproduct of that self-hate or self-harm. So I feel like this is another place where it is truly radical to just turn towards that relationship with self. And it's not a kind of navel-gazing, it's not self-preoccupation, it's actually attending to what's here in our hearts so that we can be, that we can show up more with more care for others. And it's also a place where we bring in the teachings from the Buddha on our 4 foundations of mindfulness. In that sutta, the Buddha talks about bringing each of the as we go through each of the foundations of mindfulness, we are practicing internally, practicing with our internal experience, practicing with our external experience, and then both at the same time. And within the Brahma Viharas, I feel like I find a very concrete place to be working on that as I am attending to my own experience, really attending to relationships with others and to both at the same time. So I'll be, kind of pick up that thread as we go through the practices, but I just want to mention that also. So just inviting us into this day of radical practice with kindness, and so I'm going to move into a guided loving kindness meditation. Just inviting us again to see if there's any adjustments that we can make to be comfortable as we move into this practice of kindness. Can we be kind with ourselves? In practicing with metta or loving kindness, one of the places that can sometimes be easiest to access this quality of friendliness and kindness is to bring to mind a benefactor, perhaps someone who has been kind to us, who's cared for us, has really offered love, unconditional presence. And that may be a teacher, a relative. So just inviting us to bring someone to mind here. And it may be a human or a non-human. Could be a grandparent, a teacher, a beloved pet. Maybe a tree or a place in nature where we feel particularly held. So just taking a moment to bring to mind some being that has been a benefactor to us. We may bring up an image of them or just a felt sense, maybe a sense of them at our side or at our back. Just calling this being into our awareness. And we're going to extend our good wishes towards this benefactor. I'm going to be sharing some phrases. You may have language or words or phrases of your own that you know work for you. Feel free to bring those in. I'll share the phrases. You may want to repeat them silently, or bring in your own phrases, or just let the phrases wash over you and feel the resonance. Now, extending our good wishes to our benefactor, may you be safe and protected from all harm. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. And sometimes it can be helpful to put a hand on our chest, maybe over our heart, or on our belly, or another place in the body, just as another way of generating and focusing some feelings of warmth, kindness, contact. And just continuing our good wishes towards our benefactor. May you be safe and protected from all harm. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. May you be safe and protected from all harm. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. As we continue these well wishes, we can also be tuning into just how are these wishes landing in our own experience, in our own awareness, in our body. We may notice sensations. There could be sensations of warmth. It may also be that there is an absence of sensations, or there may be agitation, irritation. All of these things arise as we do this practice of loving kindness. There's no wrong way to do it. It may be that it feels rote, and that's okay too, knowing that it's still a beneficial practice, even if it feels rote or dry. But if there is any feeling of warmth that is generated, can we kind of bookmark this experience? Know that it's available to us? Are there ways that we can sort of fan the embers of this good wishing, this kindness, this friendliness. Continuing to extend good wishes towards our benefactor. May you be safe and protected. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. May you be safe and protected from all harm. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. I'm going to continue our good wishes and switch to offering them towards ourselves, where we can thank our benefactor, release them from our awareness, and turn our awareness towards ourselves as we prepare to offer ourselves our good wishes. We may bring to mind an image of ourselves, perhaps an image of ourselves as a child, or we may just tune into this felt sense of ourselves right here in this moment, perhaps through this feeling of contact, if we have a hand on our body somewhere, on our heart. That can be a place to also focus our attention, or directing our good wishes towards ourselves. And I'll be saying the phrases with saying I instead of you, and you may wish to extend them also towards yourself. Again, bringing in your own language, words, if that feels helpful. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with peace, ease, and well-being. May I be free. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with peace, ease, and well-being. May I be free. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with peace, ease, and well-being. May I be free. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with ease, peace, and well-being. May I be free. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with ease, peace, and well-being. May I be free. So we continue these good wishes. I invite you to bring to mind someone here in our community today. We may even open to a soft gaze, see who else is present. Pick someone maybe to our left or right or in front or behind us. Maybe someone we know, maybe someone we don't know. And extend our good wishes towards this person. May you be safe and protected from all harm. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. And we may, as we continue, shift our focus to another person here in the Sangha with us, maybe on our other side or someone else near us. May you be safe and protected from all harm. May you be truly happy. May you live with ease, peace, and well-being. May you be free. Now expanding our focus to take in everyone who is here today in the room and on Zoom. And noticing that as we widen this circle, it includes ourselves. May we be safe and protected from all harm. May we be truly happy. May we live with ease, peace, and well-being. May we be free. May we be safe and protected from all harm. May we be truly happy. May we live with ease, peace, and well-being. May we be free. May we be safe and protected from all harm. May we be truly happy. May we live with peace, ease, and well-being. May we be free. I want to invite us into a break, tending to any needs that our body has, maybe taking a moment to stretch or walk. I'm going to move into this break in silence. So just taking a moment to get up, stretch, and get anything that we need to be comfortable, and then we're going to come back in about 5 minutes. So I think my clock is a little off, so I think it'd be like 15 minutes after the hour. Where are we right now?
I have 11:13.
Okay, 18 minutes after. Okay, I think we're mostly back. Maybe, yeah. All right, welcome back. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about this practice of metta, or loving kindness. This way that we're meeting the world, the prow of our ship. This has been a real focus of my practice for many years, and I still find it really hard. So I think that's why I keep engaging with it. I'm like, this is very much a lifelong practice for me. And I've done many metta retreats, particularly used to go to the winter metta retreat at Spirit Rock every year for maybe a decade. And I just got so much out of that practice. Learning from teachers like Sylvia Bornstein, who just she could just sit in a chair and transmit metta. Just watching her in the hall was a teaching on metta. She just radiated loving kindness. And I also remember in some of the early teachings I got around loving kindness. I remember Jack Kornfield saying that he took on as a practice doing metta for himself for a whole year. And I remember at the time I was like, I need to do that. And so I did it, and then a year went by and I was like, I need to keep doing it. I feel like I spent a number of years really just focusing on loving kindness for myself, because that felt really challenging. And I would do the phrases and it would feel just dry, empty, devoid of any warmth. And I kept at it, just really kept at it. And I found a couple of benefits even in that practice being so dry, so challenging. One piece that I really learned is that the phrase practice in particular actually is a concentration practice. It's a way of focusing the mind. And for me, as someone who struggled with a lot of anxiety and worry, just that practice of shifting the track of my mind from worry or anxiety to the phrases, even if it felt like it wasn't generating much, it was a kind of like a shift from this kind of negative mind state to a neutral mind state. And actually a neutral mind state can be a great place to go when we're dealing with some of the grooves in our mind that may be really habituated to worry, to judgment, to anxiety, to catastrophizing, whatever it might be. And so just that shift, using kind of the concentration piece of the phrases, was in itself very beneficial. And then, in addition, it was really cultivating and planting the seeds for both being able to occasionally generate some actual warmth and kindness towards myself and others, and also to opening up to being able to receive that kind of warmth, kindness, and friendliness from others. I think this is the piece. We often focus very much on directing our loving kindness to ourselves and others, but there is a component there of receiving it that has, over the years, become a very important piece for me. Can I open to actually receiving the loving kindness that is coming at me from others? At any moment, there are people all over the world sending loving kindness to all beings, and can we actually also open to being on the receiving end of that? It's happening all the time. So it's been over now many years of this practice. It continues to have more layers and more richness for me. And I think it's really interesting that one of the stories from the suttas about loving kindness that the Buddha told was specifically about loving kindness as an antidote to fear. So the Buddha tells this story about these monks, and evidently he directed them, it's going to be the rains retreat, go practice in this particular forest for your rains retreat. And they went there, and then they kind of came running back to the Buddha and said, there are these spirits, there are these very malevolent spirits in the forest, and they're making really bad smells, and we can't practice there. And the Buddha, so the instruction the Buddha gave to them is go back and practice loving kindness. And so they went back and they just practiced loving kindness, and things really shifted with the spirits, and the spirits stopped harassing them with bad smells, and they were able to kind of make a more be able to coexist in this forest, and I think then have more friendly relations with the spirits. And I think it's interesting there that the Buddha's instruction is focusing on our own attitude, bringing this practice of loving kindness. It may shift others, but we're actually shifting ourselves in that environment from, in this case, the fear of the spirits to a practice of loving kindness. So I love that offering, and it's been one that's been very true for me as I've worked with my own fear and anxiety, that the loving kindness practice is a real way to shift my own experience. And then often that shifts my relationships with others. The other thing I come back to from the suttas, this is in the Anguttara Nikaya, is the 11 benefits of loving kindness. And so it says that practicing metta will lead us to sleep easily, wake easily, have pleasant dreams, people will love you, devas and animals will love you, devas will protect you, external dangers such as poisons, weapon, and fire will not harm you. Your face will be radiant. Your mind will be serene. You will die unconfused, and you will be reborn in happier realms. So that's a pretty good list to work towards. So I don't know if any of you have had any of those, felt any of those benefits. But I feel like I have gotten some of those benefits. So I want to try on actually doing this practice with a partner. So we're going to move into some diads. And I think the other thing I want to mention before we try on this partner practice around loving kindness is that there's many ways to practice. We've been practicing just today with this phrase practice, so that could be one way that you practice with a partner. So you're going to pair you up and ask the first person to offer love and kindness to the second person for just a few minutes. This might be really uncomfortable, but we'll just do it for a few minutes. See how it is. and then we'll switch partners. And so there's one way to do it would be simply to speak out loud some phrases of good wishing. Another way that the loving kindness is practiced is what's called suffusing or radiating loving kindness. And that's sitting more with the felt sense of loving kindness. Sometimes it gets generated by the phrases, but there may be other ways that we generate that. So just to say that there are these two ways of practicing. The Venerable Bhikkhu Analayo tells this great story about his own loving kindness practice. And it was a time when he was practicing in Sri Lanka in the monastery, and he said he was really struggling with his metta practice and just couldn't generate loving kindness, just feeling dry, nothing there. And he was practicing in the forest, and he saw these two animals. They're kind of like maybe squirrel-like animals, but it was something else, some Sri Lankan animal. These two animals playing with each other. And all of a sudden his heart just burst with loving kindness. And so he said forever after, his practice was he would just think of those animals playing, and he would just suffuse loving kindness. So it's just so that's his practice. And so just to say however we do it is great. So leave it up to the person offering loving kindness. You may do it silently. You may do it with phrases out loud. You may just suffuse some loving kindness towards your partner. And then for the partner, can you tune into receiving the good wishes of your partner? So both people are practicing on both sides. Practicing offering to your partner and practicing receiving from your partner.
At the same time?
Well, one person will be in each role. So the first person will be offering, and the partner will be receiving, and then we'll switch partners, and the second person will be offering, and the partner will be receiving. Does that make sense? So we're going to do it just for 3 minutes each. Just try it on. Any questions? And so here in the room, you will find a person near you. And for folks on the Zoom, we will partner, put folks in breakout rooms. So I'm just looking. I think we have, can't tell if it's 3 or 4 people. Okay, so that will work on Zoom.
Okay. So I'll do that now.
Unless there's any other questions, we're going to move into finding a partner. And I'll ring the bell to switch partners. All right, I think we're all back now. So how was that practice? I was curious about, how was it to offer and receive in the dyad practice, and also any other questions or anything that's come up around this loving kindness practice specifically. Okay.
For me,
starting here.
It was kind of interesting because I felt like I could have transmitted it, but then shifting to receiving is kind of like, and my partner put his hand on his chest and so I did that, and it kind of like made me feel more receptive to have my hand on my chest. Because we were doing it silently.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, I saw your hand also.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it was very challenging to be consciously looking to get positive vibe, because my mind actually does not work that way. I watched that was pretty interesting. And it was surprisingly intimate.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out just surprisingly intimate. But it's not easy to do. It's not.
Yeah.
society doesn't teach us to. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this is not an easy practice. Any other, curious if anyone on Zoom had any reflections or?
I would say one of the challenges, of course, again, is not to touch, in the nonverbal. Nonverbal, a lot easier because it's nonverbal. There's no words to it. Once the words, when he was using verbal and used may we, initially my thinking was like it was a general blessing. Then it's like my intent in receiving was that it was an embrace. That not only was he doing it for me, but also loving kindness for himself. So it may sound like a little mental gymnastics, but it was a way of shifting, receiving. So that I was not alone in loving kindness.
Yeah. Well, I really like that, and I think for me, we could call it mental gymnastics. This process of like finding what works. With Metta, this has been like, I feel like over and over again, it's like I am my own science experiment with Metta and really finding like what language works, how do I, how am I in relationship with whoever I'm offering to or receiving from? What's the distance at which I can receive it? Like maybe, you mentioned the piece around it being hard to do it with eye contact. Would it have been different if you closed your eyes? And I'm constantly trying on these different configurations to see like what actually lands for me. I remember at a time when I was really working with this edge around receiving, I was actually on a retreat with my teacher, Aaron, at Vallecitos, and I don't know if you've been there, but there's a hall with this big fireplace, and then upstairs there's a loft where the library is. And so everyone was in the hall, and it's like it's all one continuous space. And I found like I was really working on receiving her metta, which is has a very substantial metta field. And I had to move up to the loft, and I laid down on the couch and like put my hand over my heart, and I was able to receive there. It was like I had to take a little distance to be able to receive. So and then of course it changes. I have one experience, and then the next time I come and I might be available to something else. So I'm constantly in this process of adjusting, experimenting, seeing what's working now, what's available now to me. So I like what you're saying about like, here I'm finding where this is available to me. Yeah.
I did find that closing the eyes helped. There wasn't as much to process or something, and I definitely felt it amplified for me the experience of receiving when I closed my eyes.
Yeah.
I liked being able to, in the vein of keeping it fresh, being able to make up phrases and sort of tap into, I guess my loving kindness or sympathetic joy for gas.
Yeah.
Things I wish for.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like another place of experimentation is like how much do we change our phrases and how much do we keep them consistent so that they're like, there's this sort of, like I feel like the two ends of the spectrum. One is it really fresh and current in this moment? And then is it something that I can just bring to mind in an instant in a moment of difficulty? So that's where the consistency can help. And I always think, we're practicing, of course, for the moment of our death. And so we want to have some solid phrases in our pocket. So that's the benefit of consistency.
Yeah, the library.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to have something solid you can reach for. And also, then I think with that stability, we can bring in what's really alive in the moment. But I think there's sometimes a discouragement of constantly changing them, because then you don't have that stable set of phrases for duress. And I remember one of my fellow teachers had like this. She was a leader, guy led kikes, and she fell into this riverbed and was there for 4 hours before she was rescued. And she said, I was so grateful for my phrases in that moment. She was able to just move into her practice as she was in this riverbed for 4 hours waiting for rescue. So there's hopefully those things don't happen to us. And also part of our practice is being prepared for these moments that are so hard. Any other thoughts or questions around metta before we move on to some compassion practice? All right, well, let's move into another guided meditation. And here we're going to, again, as we move through our practice with the loving kindness as our intention, we'll kind of shift from loving kindness into compassion. So just inviting ourselves to bring in as much ease as possible in our posture. Maybe asking ourselves, is there anything that would make me a little more comfortable in this moment? And we're going to come back to our good wishes for ourselves, just entering in with loving kindness, bringing our attention, our awareness again to ourselves as the object of our good wishes. We may bring a hand to our heart or some other part of our body as a way of just making contact with ourselves, bringing ourselves to our awareness. We can again bring an image in if that's helpful, and directing our good wishes to ourselves. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with ease, peace, and well-being. May I be free. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with peace, ease, and well-being. May I be free. May I be safe and protected from all harm. May I be truly happy. May I live with peace, ease, and well-being. May I be free. I'm going to continue our good wishes towards ourselves. I'm going to practice just for a couple of minutes in silence, and I invite you to bring in your own phrases or language, or if there's been a particular phrase that's really resonated for you, you can just repeat that. But we're going to continue to offer ourselves these good wishes for a couple minutes in silence. as we're continuing this practice of good wishing, bringing our friendliness towards ourselves and our experience, we may be aware of some place of discomfort, some place of difficult feelings that may arise. It may be that there even is, irritation that comes up around the practice itself, or it may be something that we just know is there in our experience, maybe something we're carrying in today from some difficulty with others, maybe a challenging conversation we had with someone, something difficult at work, something that may be arising in our family or with a partner. And just allowing that experience to also be present. We're not necessarily bringing up something that's not here, but just allowing where there is some discomfort, pain, difficulty in our experience. Could be grief or anger, hurt, anxiety. It might be our own, it might be something that's just in our field. Maybe a friend who's going through a hard time. Allowing this to be present even within our practice of good wishing. And as we turn to attend to any challenge that's present in our awareness, discomfort, pain, suffering, we bring in our practice of compassion. And compassion is not anything that we need to do or generate. It is just this act of being present with that which is difficult. Just meeting a moment of difficulty with our full attention, our full presence. And I'm going to offer some phrases, and you can offer them to yourself or just let them, you just receive them, let them wash over you. Or you may have your own practice of compassion phrases that you can bring in. I care about my pain. I am here for this moment of suffering. Through this caring, may my suffering be eased. May I meet this moment of suffering with care. May the suffering open my heart. I care about my pain. I am here for this moment of suffering. Through this caring, may my suffering be eased. May I meet this moment of suffering with care. May this suffering open my heart. I care about my pain. May I meet this moment of suffering with care. Through this caring, may my suffering be eased. May this suffering open my heart. I care about my pain. I am here for this moment of suffering. Through this caring, may my suffering be eased. May I meet the suffering with care. May this suffering open my heart. I care about this pain. I am here for this moment of suffering. Through this caring, may my suffering be eased. May I meet the suffering with care. May this suffering open my heart. And we'll continue this practice of just meeting our experience in this moment with any discomfort, difficulty, or pain that is present. Just meeting it with our full attention. If any of the phrases have resonated, you may continue to offer yourself that phrase or any other that are supporting you in this practice of just meeting our pain with attention and care. So just continuing this practice in silence for a few minutes. Continuing to offer ourselves our care and attention, maybe with phrases or just through our presence and attention. Thank you for your practice. So I'm going to go to our lunch break pretty soon, just another 10 minutes. And for those who have ordered lunch, it is here. And So just before we go to our lunch break, I just wanted to say a few words around this practice of compassion. This is like another one that has definitely been a challenge for me, and in particular as I started to learn the phrase practice around, I was just leading it, we kind of went from the loving kindness, touching into whatever suffering may be present, and then offering phrases of compassion is, one way of practicing with compassion. It was something that I found quite challenging, and I had this idea like, I'm supposed to be compassionate. Like somehow this is something that I was supposed to know how to do or generate some feeling of compassion. I think I just got stuck there for quite some time. And it was interesting, is there was a time in my life where I was running an organization and had a lot of kind of, just managing many relationships. And I remember hearing feedback from a few different people. You have a very compassionate presence, or like, I really feel your compassion when we're, whether it was like from a staff member where we would have our one-on-ones every week, and it was like, I really feel your compassion in this relationship. And I was just like, okay, I hear from other people that they experience me this way, but I don't exactly know what it is. And I think some of the challenge for me was in growing up in a family just with a lot of neglect, both like material neglect as well as kind of emotional neglect. This, there was a piece missing for me in my own growing up of actually being held with some compassion. I learned very early that if I was upset or something was wrong, I just had to figure out how to manage that, because that was going to be one more thing that was going to just break my parents, because they had so little capacity to care for a child. So it was like a lot of, just suppressing my own emotions in order to survive. I didn't really have that parent that could be like, hey, wow, it seems like you're upset. What are you feeling? Are you maybe feeling some fear, feeling some anger? Like, I got to adulthood with very little ability even to identify some of those emotional states. And so, having missed that myself, it was a little hard to know how to offer it to myself and others. But then I was hearing that, I am offering it to others. I just don't know quite what it is. And I think the thing that I kind of went back to a few people and I was like, okay, you describe me as compassionate, but what does that actually mean? Like, what are you experiencing? And they said, well, when we're talking, you're giving me your full attention. And I really feel listened to. And I feel like you're really present with whatever is happening, including difficult emotions. And I was like, it is this simple presence that we're cultivating. It's like through my own meditation practice, this was something I was really cultivating. Is like, can I be really present to my own experience? And it was something I really tried very actively to bring into my relationships with others. And I think at that time, particularly in the workplace, because I had had so many experiences in my own working life of having a supervisor or someone who was just like not present. I can remember one boss, we would have check-ins every week. She would be on her computer doing emails through the entire check-in, right? Never even make eye contact. And it was like, so I learned a lot about what not to do as a boss. So one of my intentions was like, when I am meeting with my staff, I'm giving them my full attention. Anyone who comes in, like into our office, a volunteer, a board member, whoever it is, I'm going to give them my full attention. We'll drop whatever I'm doing so I can turn and give my full attention to whoever I'm in relationship with. And so I was like, this is practice of attention this practice of presence and continued presence with whatever arises, no matter how difficult. And that was like a real aha for me. I was like, oh, this is the practice, whether it's with my own pain or with the pain of another. It is this simple presence. And it's just like when I think back to that child, it's like all that I needed was simple presence, just the simple attention and presence of a parent that often I didn't get, and that so often we don't get in our world the way that it is right now, with so much busyness and our attention going in so many directions. Just getting that simple presence of a friend, partner, lover, family member is so valuable and such a gift when we do receive it. So that is this practice of compassion, just being present, steady with one another and with ourselves. And one of the first phrases I really worked with as I kind of got the sense of what compassion was for me is I would just say to myself, I'm not going anywhere. Over and over. And just use that one phrase, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And it was really this process of building trust within myself, that I am going to be present, whatever comes up. I am going to be that good parent who offers that steady, unconditional, loving attention with whatever arises. And that's been like a trust-building process within myself, to allow those parts of myself that are hurt to be able to be here, emerge, start to tell me what's going on even. So you just offer that as one way to think about working with compassion. And in terms of thinking about another way to practice with compassion, one thing that I've found really helpful is what I think of as kind of a compassionate listening practice that we can do with a partner. And one great resource around this kind of compassionate listening is something called co-counseling. I don't know if folks have had any experience with co-counseling, but it's just like two people offering to be that kind of compassionate listener for each other, and then taking turns in sharing the sharing role of sharing whatever is present for you in the moment, and the other partner being the listener, this person who is giving their full attention. And then you just take turns. And I love this as an idea of, often we feel like we have to go to a professional, and it's not like there's not an incredible value in professional therapists. I have two myself. So, very valuable. And also, sometimes what's being provided is that real compassionate listening, that full attention, knowing that you have someone there for you who is giving you their full attention for that hour. And then we can also offer that to each other through kind of like a compassionate listening or co-counseling kind of model. So I just offer as an optional practice during lunch, since we're moving into lunch, if you want to, you could find a partner to do just a compassionate listening practice with. And I would offer that if you decide to do that the two of you, find a corner, someplace where you can feel like comfortable sharing, and that you take a moment just to connect heart to heart, as you were talking about with the Metta practice, noticing, when we put our hands over our heart, actually there's a kind of connection that happens there. So even just to take a moment to both put your hands on your heart and feel that there's a heart connection, or maybe even just be curious, could there be a heart connection here? And then for the first partner, just to share, maybe for 3 to 5 minutes, what's on their heart. And the other partner to fully listen, give your partner who's sharing your full attention. And to thank each other, switch partners, maybe take one more moment to feel your heart in connection, and then have the second person who is the listener become the sharer and share just for 3 to 5 minutes what's on your heart, and have your partner give you their full attention. So just to try that on, and it might be you don't have to do it at lunch, but you do it sometime this weekend with a friend or a partner or something. Just this practice of compassionate listening that we can offer each other. And notice, how is it to be the person who shares? How is it to be the person who listens? So we're going to move to our lunch break. We're going to take an hour, and so I'd ask we come back together right about 1:15. Welcome back. Hope everyone had a good lunch.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome back, Zoom family. So this is like a very exciting part of our journey today. We get to explore joy, sympathetic joy. Particularly, this is very good for after lunch, because sometimes it's like you don't want to do something too sleepy after lunch. So we're going to go the other direction. We're going to get into joy. So I'm just going to say a few words about just my own exploration around this practice of sympathetic joy. We also use the Pali word mudita to talk about this quality. And one thing for me that's very interesting about how joy is placed within the context of the Brahma Viharas, or these divine abodes, is it's very specifically the joy that we experience in relationship with others. So it is the encountering of joy, and then the joy that's sparked inside of ourselves through this encounter with another person, another being. I also really experience this in relationship with nature, whether it's animals, trees, wildflowers. I just came back from Vallecitos, the retreat center in the Rocky Mountains in northern New Mexico, and I was part of teaching a week-long retreat for LGBT folks. It was the first time Vallecitos has ever had an affinity retreat for our community, so that was very exciting. And it's like the monsoons in northern New Mexico, which was a surprise to me. Just storm after storm, and so we were up at 9,000 feet in this beautiful valley, and just so many wildflowers, just the whole valley full of wildflowers. It's this particular spot that didn't get logged, it hasn't been grazed, and so it has this incredible biodiversity. And actually people come in and study this property because of the biodiversity that is present there. So that was just a mudita experience. Even just being there and seeing how lush it is, so green, so much water, so many wildflowers. It was like the joy of the land itself was transmitting. And the Dalai Lama said that when you tune into this quality of sympathetic joy, you have suddenly 7 billion opportunities for joy. And the Dalai Lama was just referring to 7 billion humans on this planet. And I would include all the animals and trees and plants, then there's just like infinite billions of opportunities for joy. So this particular joy that we experience through encountering joy as we're traveling in our boat with our intention on loving kindness, on friendliness, and we encounter joy in the world, then we have the joy sparked in ourselves. And I think one of the things that's interesting also about this is that by pointing to this particular piece of sympathetic joy, the joy that we experience in others, it's actually, of all the Brahma Viharas, the one that has to be cultivated in relationship. We can be practicing with loving kindness and directing it to ourselves. The same with compassion and equanimity, but with sympathetic joy, it is pointing us into the way that we can gladden our heart through connection with another or connection with other beings. So that, to me, has been a really interesting one because it particularly points to the way that these practices are relational. And so that's part of what we've been practicing here today is actually the relational qualities of each of these practices of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, that each of them has this component of around our connection to others, our relationship with others. And with sympathetic joy, it's particularly clear to me that this is actually a place where we can be resourcing ourselves. And I think this is true of the others as well, but it's sort of the most clear with mudita that as we encounter the joy of others, it's like something that kind of fills us up, that it's that the joy that we receive in that connection is part of, it actually feels to me like a way that we build our capacity to be with everything else. For me to go and I ended up teaching a retreat for a week and then doing a self-retreat for a week at Vallecitos, and I just felt myself being filled up with the joy of being there, the joy of other people's joy at encountering this beautiful place, the joy of being in community, and that was just filling my cup up to be able to come back to the world and deal with all of the suffering that is still here, which didn't fix any of itself while I was gone. Sometimes things do resolve when we go away, but this was not one of those times. So it can be a way of resourcing ourselves, and in our culture, often we're pointed to resource ourselves, kind of in our capitalist society through, what we can buy or pay for, or, resource ourselves by getting a new car, or through therapy or self-care, yoga, massage, whatever it may be. And this piece, this resource of the joy of others is just so directly available to us when we turn ourselves toward it. But there is a practice of turning towards this, making ourselves available for the joy that's out there. And so it's that's where we can focus our attention, be on the lookout for where am I going to find joy, and make that somehow a part of our daily practice. So sometimes in my daily, routine, I like to get up in the morning when people are out with their dogs. There's a little park by my house. People come, the dogs play with each other, and I can just go, sometimes I just pretend to exercise because it seems weird to just hang out and look at people's dogs. But it brings me a lot of joy. It's just a reliable hit of joy in the morning, and the dogs are out there every day. I also get a lot of joy from all of the birds in my neighborhood. I live right by Lake Merritt, and there's just always, the pelicans bring me a ton of joy, the egrets, and just to come out and see the birds doing their thing is another great source. And I had this, really had this insight about what a resource this, an infinite resource, this quality of sympathetic joy is once when I was sitting retreat, and I was having individual meetings with my teacher, and, it was spring, I was up at Spirit Rock, it was, again, just so much beauty, everything was blooming and budding, and I was practicing out on the land, as I like to practice outside as much as possible. And I came in for my interview, and I was just so full of the joy that I was experiencing. I was just sharing with my teacher, and I noticed as we're sitting across from each other, actually I was oh, she's experiencing joy, my joy. And then I noticed, I'm having another spark of joy because I'm experiencing her joy at my joy. And I was like, wait a second, this could go on forever. It could just keep sparking the joy back and forth, It's like this infinitely renewable resource when we tune ourselves towards noticing it. So I was reflecting on it afterwards. I was like, this is an incredible force, this joy. It's so available. And I was like, this could crumble capitalism. This could take everything down. It's like if we knew that we have joy just right there available to us in every relationship. So I just think it's actually a powerful revolutionary force. And I also really noticed how in gay community, queer community, this is one of our strengths, this piece of bringing joy and finding joy in community, and whether we call it camp or just like our pride celebrations, all these things, we have this cultivated this experience of collective joy. And to just continue, and we also know how to do it in the hardest of times. And so I think this is like a piece that we can look to within our own culture and lineage, that we really know how to bring joy and bring it collectively. So I want to invite us into some joy practice. And so I'm going to invite us into pairing up again, and maybe you could find a different person, but it's also fine to stick with the same person. And so we're going to do a practice that I call sparking joy. So let me, I'm going to give the instructions, because then folks on Zoom can break out into your separate rooms. So I'm going to invite you to find a partner. Again, as you come together, just take a moment, maybe hand over heart, just to kind of make a connection with your partner. Make that heart connection. And then I'm going to invite the person who goes first just to share a moment of joy that you experienced. Maybe it was in the last day or so, or in the last week. Just any moment of joy. So you're just going to take just 2 or 3 minutes to share your own experience of joy. And so the person sharing is just going to tune into that moment. What was some of its qualities? Sharing, setting the scene, sharing how it felt. And this person who's listening is actually doing the Mudita practice of noticing what happens in me when I'm tuning into this person's experience of joy. So as the listener, that's actually the focus of the practice. What happens in me? And we can also notice what happens in the connection between us as someone is sharing about their joy. And so then we'll wrap up, thank our partner, and switch to the second person. And I will ring the bell to let us know when to switch. So for the people on the Zoom, let's give 8 minutes in the Zoom room so people can also have a little chance to debrief. How was that? So we'll go 3 minutes each and then have a couple minutes to share. How was it to share and to listen? So coming back together in the big room.
Always distracted.
So how was that practice?
Joyful.
Joyful. It's funny because I was sitting up here and I was just like listening to all the voices together and noticing how different it sounded than, other conversations. There was a lot more like variation in people's tones and pacing of their voice. Like I could feel the joy even though I couldn't hear the words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyone just want to share a little bit about how was it? Maybe particularly like how was it to listen to your partner's experience of joy?
Well, I thought it was like self-renewing, like you were talking about, enjoying their enjoyment and enjoying that I'm enjoying it, rather than be bored or something else, but and envisioning this wonderful experience he was having. It was very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Other experiences on Zoom? Yeah, I see a hand. I think is it Lee?
Yes. And so doing it reinforces having the experience, and I think makes it more likely that I will have more of them. And in the experience, it was helpful, I thought, to the other person too, who then found an experience which they hadn't thought about particularly, though they experienced it. But then, oh yeah, right, I have that. Yeah, somewhat related to mine, but so it's good to do. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
we'll start with Cass. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that it's storytelling for one thing. The exercise is storytelling. But even if you're looking for like incidents in the other out in the world or something, it kind of ignites your imagination, and I think that's joyful in itself. It just kind of takes you to this other place.
Yeah. Yeah, other experiences? Yes.
Well, there's so much stuff going on in the world around us, and in our heads, we really, when you decide to focus your attention on, really that does kind of become your reality. Mm-hmm. I know that when I'm inside my own head, it's like mostly comparing, analyzing, anticipating, worrying, figuring out, problem solving. When you focus on another person and their joy, it takes you not only to take you out of your head to focus on this other person, you actually get to focus on the joy. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of makes you connect with other joyous thoughts maybe in your own head. Or when you just focus on the joy that you've recently experienced, even that takes you out of that continually not necessarily happily chattering mind.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, I think one thing that makes me think of is this idea of the negativity bias, that we're wired to look for what's wrong because it's survival, watching out for what's wrong is going to keep us safe. And also, this deliberate, this is part of what I think is, radical and effective about these heart practices in general is that we're deliberately inclining the mind towards these more, maybe more nourishing qualities. And it's even as you're focusing on the experience of another, you're actually having a present moment experience in yourself. It is not this isn't just escapism or something like that. It's actually inviting in a present moment experience right here. Yeah. Other shares or questions or anything that's coming up?
Give it a go on this. Well, for one thing, in terms of joy, an expression like Cass was saying, it was storytelling because it was a reframing of the experience and an approximation of the moment, so that there was an acknowledgement. One thing that came, of course, was acknowledgement that joy can be anything from just a simple little moment of just being totally aware of, for me, a bee working a flower, to a big thing where in the middle of a dance with a bunch of other people, or basketball or whatever, that you are in sync.
Mm-hmm.
And having that, as an old phrase goes, a peak experience of release. So it's like releasing my mind into the moment, the flow of the moment. The other thing was what to do with envy. Was when that came up, and just when we talked, was having the sense of joy of someone else's accomplishment, and yet that other part of going comparative mind,
right?
Of going like, so it's like then you go like, okay, well, one antidote was that sense of taking a moment of gratitude for what I do have. And actually that's sort of like a reminder of when I do have one of those moments of joy within my own life, of taking just a brief moment of gratitude for that moment.
Yeah.
So it's like anchoring my experience and my emotion to the joy that has just arisen. So.
Yeah, and that, I love that you brought in that piece around envy. Is like with the Brahma Viharas, we sometimes talk about the near enemies and the far enemies of each of the qualities. And so like with loving kindness, the near enemy is the thing that looks like it but is not it. So that would be like sentimentality would be the near enemy of loving kindness, and the far enemy would be hatred. So the far enemy is the opposite. But the near enemy is interesting because it's like the thing that looks like it but is not it. And in the case of mudita, the near enemy is often called exuberance. And it's like a kind of an unconnected or ungrounded joy. And then the far enemy would be like the opposite of joy, so unhappiness. Or envy. I mean, envy is like the far enemy of joy. It's the opposite. It's its opposite. And yeah, so just like again, it's an opportunity to notice like what's coming up in me when I notice the joy of another. Is it the sympathetic joy or is it envy? And I think one of the things I notice around that, and it might not be true for others, is kind of like what are the conditions where I'm encountering people's joy. Like one where it really is hard for me is social media. Like sometimes when I see people celebrating things on social media, even my friends, I can like, might have that feeling of envy or like skepticism. Like, are you kind of making up a story, or is this an authentic experience that you're sharing? It's just like not good conditions for me to experience sympathetic joy. So just to like know that about myself, this is not the place to go for me for sympathetic joy. Though if it's like an animal video, great, I will experience sympathetic joy. I just go to social media for animal videos and astrology memes. That's it. But the rest of it is real hard to connect to. Like that's what I notice. It's just hard to connect to. So just noticing like, oh, is it different to sit down to tea with a friend and hear about a joyous thing that happened to them versus scrolling their social media feed and seeing like something that they're posting about their job or something like that. And I'm like, ugh. So that's just something I notice for myself, is when there's more connection, often there's more opportunity for joy and less for comparing mind. And that might be different for different people. Yeah.
So aside from looking for specific areas where you can find joy, like the dogs and stuff like that, do you like kind of scour interactions during the day to kind of seek out joy in other people? Or, I mean, is that a practice, or is it just something that you sort of, it's a separate compartment of intentionality?
Yeah, I feel like I definitely have built in like reliable places of joy, that are kind of getting things to be habits that I do that are often around getting outside and, seeing dogs, seeing birds, seeing beauty. I get a lot of joy from being out at dawn. That's like one of my practices, is to get myself out of the house at dawn. And then with friends, like I have certain friends where we share stories of things that are going well. That's a kind of a deliberate practice. And that is like, that's another place for me. It's like, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's like sending I use Marco Polo a lot, which is like a little video, sends videos, and just like, hey, here's something great that happened. And sharing that with a friend. Or having a friend share with me something that they're a success, they're proud of, a healing moment. So like a lot of that is my friends who I'm on some kind of healing. We support each other in healing, and it's like sharing those moments where we had an opening or an aha or a new behavior. Yeah. So having friends that I regularly share moments of joy or moments of pride or
people
success.
on buses and they're having conversations on their phone or something.
Yeah. But some of it is like tuning in. I think when I first started really practicing with Mudita, it was a tuning in. Like, can I be on the lookout for joy? Yeah. Kids also. I don't have as much kids in my life, but that's another, people tell me, great, reliable source of joy. Maybe kids that are not your own.
Hang out at playground.
Maybe not so recommended. Nieces and nephews, friends, yeah. Grandchildren. So yeah, just being on the lookout for joy. Any other just questions or shares before we go into a little more practice?
Well, this was really good to do at the end. Joy.
Yeah.
Because I said that to my partner. It's uplifting. And usually I don't know why most teachers get that wrong.
Oh,
I had an Italian teacher for years that was always the new stuff was at the end. I was like, when you're tired.
yeah. All right, well, I'm going to do another guided meditation, and this is a meditation I've learned from Lama Rod Owens, and it's in his book, Love and Rage, if anyone's familiar with that. He is a teacher, a Tibetan teacher, based in Atlanta, and black gay man, and is just someone I've really been tuning into. And so this practice is called the 7 Homecomings, and it's really taking our refuge practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and expanding that to add 4 more refuges of ancestors or lineage, the earth, silence, and ourselves. And I think we can think of this practice actually as a benefactor practice, just as we were working with loving kindness with the benefactor. This is where we tune into our benefactors and into receiving care and support from our benefactors. So it's really a tuning into receiving in a way, the loving kindness that's available to us from these refuges or benefactors. So I am going to just invite us into practice. Taking a moment as we begin practicing together to tune into our present moment experience. So maybe tuning into sensations, the breath, contact, maybe sounds, our field of vision. So taking a moment to touch into this moment, in this body, in this space. In this practice, I will be inviting in 7 homecomings or refuges. And I invite you to participate at the level that feels right. It may be actively visualizing these refuges or benefactors, or it may be just receiving the words and the sounds and just noticing what arises for you. There's not a need to particularly effort in kind of visualizing what I'm saying if that doesn't feel supportive. You can also just notice what arises and receive. The first of the homecomings, refuges, or benefactors that I'm going to invite is of our teachers and guides. We may invite in the Buddha, the historical teacher, or our own sense of Buddha nature. We may invite in teachers or mentors that have been important to us. Inviting in these benefactors who have been invested in our growth, our healing, our well-being, who have been a guide in some way on our path, maybe pointed out the next steps in our journey. Here we're inviting these teachers and guides to be part of a circle of care and support around us. We may actually imagine them coming in, forming a circle around us, or we may have just a felt sense of their presence, that they're here with us on the path. Maybe at our side or at our back. Just inviting a felt sense of the care and support that we've received from these benefactors, teachers, guides, the Buddha. Inviting ourselves to tune into receiving care and support from these beings. And into this circle of care and support, inviting in next the Dharma, the truth, the way things are. I can also think of this as our wisdom texts, our source of inspiration and wisdom. There may be particular teachings, books, poems, other art that has been a particular inspiration to us on our path. Wisdom sources that have provided us with care and support. So inviting these sources of wisdom, this Dharma, to be part of our circle of care and support. Just tuning into what we have received and what we can receive in this moment, inviting these sources of wisdom, this Dharma, to be part of our circle of care and support. And next, inviting in our third refuge or homecoming of Sangha or community. We can sense into the community that is present here right now, being part of our circle of care and support. We can invite in other sanghas or communities that we're a part of, spiritual friends, just expanding our circle of care and support to include those people or groups where we feel held, supported, cared for. Those communities where we can show up as our full selves. And if in this moment there are not communities that come to mind that truly make us feel cared for and supported, we can plant the seed that we may find those communities in the future. And just tuning into, inclining towards the experience of receiving care and support from our sanghas, from our communities, as part of this growing circle of care and support. And inviting in next our fourth homecoming, our refuge of ancestors and lineage. And here we don't have to invite in anyone who is not fully here for our well-being, who wants the best for us. Inviting in only those ancestors who are supporting us in our well-being. If anyone else shows up, we can just say no, we're not welcome. And maybe our ancestors in our family line, maybe our ancestors of affinity, could be our queer ancestors, those who have won the freedoms that we now enjoy. It may also be those who hold lineages that we're a part of, those who have passed down dharma or traditions or practices that we are a part of now. Just inviting those who have come before, who have benefited us, to be part of our circle of care and support. Tuning into receiving the care and support available to us. And inviting next the fifth homecoming or refuge of the earth and the natural world. Inviting the earth to be part of our circle of care and support. We may tune in now to the feeling of the earth under us, supporting us, actually supporting our bodies in this moment. And you may tune into all that we receive from the earth. Food, water, shelter, medicine. Feeling all of the ways that we're cared for and nourished by the earth. Inviting the earth and the natural world to be part of our circle of care and support. Bringing our attention to all that we receive from the earth and the natural world. Next, we invite in the sixth homecoming or refuge of silence. We can also think of this as space. It's maybe the silence that supports our practice. Or we can think of it as the spaciousness of the sky, the space that has the capacity to hold everything. The spaciousness of awareness, mystery. We can think of it as the cosmos. Inviting silence and space to be part of our circle of care and support. And tuning our attention into all that we receive from silence and space. And finally, we invite ourselves in as the seventh and final homecoming or refuge. As we have invited in this circle of care and support, can feel ourselves resting upon the earth, the natural world, surrounded by our teachers and mentors, the Dharma or sources of wisdom, our community and Sangha, ancestors and lineage holders. We may feel ourselves held above by silence and space into this vast circle of care and support. We invite ourselves, both as a benefactor the awareness, our wise self that holds all of us, cares for us. And we also are inviting ourselves to be held within this circle, to receive all the care and support that's available. We can put ourselves at the center, allowing ourselves to be held, steeped in the care and support of our benefactors, our refuges or homecomings. And it may be that there's just one or two or three of these homecomings that's really shown up for us today, and that's great. We may be planting the seeds that these homecomings or refuges show up for us in the future. Or now just taking the next couple minutes in silence, to whatever extent it feels available, that we tune into the care and support that's available to us from our benefactors, our refuges, our homecomings. Just continuing for a couple minutes in silence to receive. As we come towards the close of this practice, just inviting any gratitude or appreciation that's present for our benefactors, our homecomings. Just allowing that to arise and offering our circle of care and support, our benefactors, our gratitude. And with our gratitude and appreciation, we can release this circle of care and support, allow all of our benefactors, our homecomings, to go back to wherever they came from with our thanks. We're releasing them, letting them dissolve. We may imagine that this circle is just dissolving into light. And that light is being absorbed by our own body. Perhaps we're breathing it in, or it's settling on our skin, being absorbed. And we know that we can call upon these benefactors when we need them. All right, so we've now been practicing with the first three of our Brahma Viharas, or heart practices: loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. And so for me, this is where things start to come together with equanimity. Equanimity, we were talking about the near enemy and the far enemy. The thing that looks like equanimity but is not equanimity would be like detachment or indifference. And then the thing that would be the opposite would be, just being all over the place. I don't know what the Buddhist term for that is. Yeah. So, it's helpful to say what it's not. It's not indifference. It's not being checked out. It's not detachment. It is really through engaging with the world, engaging with everything that comes to us with this relationship of friendliness or loving kindness, with our practice, our presence, our attention, that we actually... What it feels like to me is that over time, as I'm focusing my practice and my attention on these first three, loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, I'm gradually gaining capacity to be with all that comes. So to be with the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. And there's just this capacity that happens through the cultivation of the other three practices. So for myself, I don't have a specific equanimity practice. It is really like equanimity is happening somewhat on its own as the fruits of the other three practices. Now, someone else might tell you something totally different, but this is how it has shown up for me in my practice in working with these heart qualities now for some years. What I find is that the equanimity kind of grows on its own. So there are equanimity phrases. There are things like, I don't actually work with phrases for equanimity. I have to look them up. Things like, may I accept things just as they are. All beings are the owners of their karma. I don't actually know what that means. That's above my pay grade. But, your happiness and unhappiness depends on your actions, not on my wishes for you. So, that quality of equanimity is being with things as they are. And one of the things that I notice in this, gradually increased capacity is that it is also through, it's like through these practices that our capacity increases, but also through just being with things as they are. And in particular, I think of the 3 characteristics that the Buddha pointed to, or the marks of existence, which are suffering, there is suffering, impermanence, everything changes, and non-self. And non-self always feels like the one that I'm just like, is that the best word for it? I don't know. Some people say not self or non-self. But one of the things that I have really seen when I try to understand that particular mark of non-self is it is actually noticing how the self is constantly changing. So it feels related to impermanence, that as we go through our life and everything we encounter, one, we can't really find a self, but also whatever we're thinking of as self is in a constant state of change. And one of the ways I've been really thinking about this recently is that this is actually the process of grief and loss, and that is part of, as we go through life and we go through grief and loss over and over again, it just keeps breaking us open, and we keep having to kind of fit ourselves together in a new way, and that this is actually this piece of non-self that the Buddha was talking to. And that we can almost think of it as loss and change within our own understandings of ourselves. And Lama Rod Owens actually has a beautiful quote about this where he says, grief is us trying to figure out who and what we are when something has changed. And that just like really has resonated for me, particularly lately as there's been so much loss. So much loss in my own life just over this pandemic, losing family members, having to say goodbye to a beloved animal companion, having just the world completely change. I just feel like the work of grief is constantly present. Loss is constantly present. And it keeps being something that is making me remake myself. So it's, I think of like, there's that form of Japanese pottery, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like you actually break the pot and then put it back together.
Wabi-sabi.
Yeah, with kind of gold, the cracks all become gold. And yeah, so we're just constantly being broken and remade. And that is, the Buddha is pointing to this as being one of the characteristics that we know to be true about life. And this breaking and remaking is also, for me, a big piece of how equanimity is built. It is this, it's as though each time loss and grief is breaking me open or unmaking me, I get put back together with a little bit more capacity or with a little bit more spaciousness to hold all that is coming. And so each of those places of loss, transformation, opening is increasing my equanimity. And then I can go visit my family and find out how I'm really doing. That's the true test of your equanimity. I think Ram Dass said, that if you think you're enlightened, go and visit your family. Yeah. So that's the really advanced equanimity. But even there, I noticed more spaciousness. I had a recent visit with my mother for her 80th birthday, and I was like, I've got a little more capacity here. Even here, in the hardest place, there's a little more capacity. I came across this quote from someone named Francis Weller, who wrote a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, which I haven't read, but I really love this quote. And he says, the work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I carry only grief, I'll bend towards cynicism and despair. If I have only gratitude, I'll become saccharine and won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. I'm just going to read that again because it's a little bit long. The work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I carry only grief, I'll bend towards cynicism and despair. If I have only gratitude, I'll become saccharine and won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. So grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. So I feel like that quote kind of brings us, back to just some of the intention in practicing today with these divine abodes, these heart qualities, is this piece of going back to how do we keep our heart open in really difficult times? How do we keep our heart soft and open as we're dealing with so much change, so much loss, so much war and conflict? And I think this practice of equanimity is also that practice of keeping our heart soft and open. And through these practices that we've been engaging in, and in particular, for me, through cultivating them in relationship with self, in my close relationships, and in community, is really the place where I'm keeping my heart soft and open. Really, doing the work of showing up for my own joys and sorrows, and for the joys and sorrows of others. And not letting myself get brittle in all that is, all the difficulty that is happening right now, which can sometimes, it can happen. It's like, oh, there's so much, it might be, I just can't deal with one more thing. But then can I keep returning to the practices and keep finding the ways that by inclining my heart towards these divine abodes, as well as gratitude. Gratitude has been a huge part of my practice. It's like an increasingly big part of my practice. I find I have more capacity to be with all that's difficult. I am getting more equanimity. And that equanimity is like this very engaged, very alive equanimity, which is welcoming everything as my teacher Aaron has said, I welcome everything as like the material of my awakening. And that these practices are part of what's cultivating that heart that really welcomes everything as material for our awakening. Yeah, and this world is going to keep throwing things at us. I'm not seeing any relief in sight. So we really gotta just keep, for me, it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep doubling down on my practice. I'm going to keep bringing my practice because that is the one refuge that's really there for me. I can't get the world to stop being a place that is been feeling, so unpredictable and frightening and threatening, and then also beautiful and joyous and all of those things. So, yes, I just want to leave us all with a lot of encouragement, including myself. a lot of encouragement to stick with these practices in these times. Yeah, I think I'm going to just stop there and see if folks have questions and thoughts as we're moving towards closing, or about equanimity.
Well, it strikes me that what we've been talking about is balance. Between near enemy and far enemy, but a place that hears without being reactive, lost, and being balanced. Even, I think about how I had to learn to sort of modulate how much news I watch. There's a balance. And above a certain amount is debilitating. This is bad. There's lots of bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's lots to think about. And lots to say. One of the things I'm thinking is that, for one, this equanimity thing, it used to just be a concept, but now I think that in the sense of meaning being open and welcoming to whatever's coming, it's really now more important than ever. Because we used to be able to be open and most of the stuff was good, so feel like you could positively react. And now there's a tendency to this guy
Francis Weller.
Yeah, he talks a lot about grief softening the heart. Well, it can soften the heart, but when I feel grief, and I'm sure a lot of people do too, it causes me to contract, causes me to pull away a little from, and which is the opposite of what equanimity is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I think equanimity is important, and I think continuing to practice is important because it's sort of easy to be inside our head and that whole negative binds thing, but an application to the practice which takes the focus out of the head and onto these concepts that we have to equanimity is a great thing, but I can't listen to as much news as I can before. So I got to I'm not going to do that. I can't reject all of that stuff altogether. I have to engage in it, or at least that's how I feel. A couple random thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the news has come up a couple of times. I have also been in a real practice of what's the right amount of news to take in, because it is. There's no end to it, and to things that are scary, bad, catastrophic. Yeah. So how do we stay engaged but titrate? What's the right dosage? There's so much, I think, in our practice that's trying to figure this out. What's the right dosage of all of these? Both, the good, making sure that we get the right dosage of things that gladden our heart, that we're keeping on staying engaged even with what's difficult, but at the right dosage. At one dosage something's medicine, at another dosage it's poison. So, yeah. I know for myself I've kind of try to engage with just one story a day, whether it's listen to a podcast or read one article, but take in one story a day. It's still a lot compared to how much information we got 100 years ago. But there's an infinite number of things we could be taking in. I'm going to check in with the Zoom family. Any questions or shares from folks? Yeah, Lee.
Just a suggestion related to what we've been doing, and that's gratitude practice. So I've been doing that with my spouse once a day or so for, 10 or 12 years or so, pretty much every day. And I've noticed the benefits both in myself through introspection and in him through observation. It doesn't have to be done with somebody else. And actually, the other thing I want to suggest, partly out of self-interest, University of Southern California, USC is the letters. And if you look for USC Mindful, there's a free app that they have, and a piece of it, when you first come on it, there's meditations and all sorts of things, is a gratitude cloud, which they've put together. And so the question for people to answer if they want to, and put their first name on it if they want to, is what are you grateful for today? And I do that every morning. And as I said, this is partly out of self-interest. So it's really nice to think that people I know are noticing my little post, or I'm noticing their little post. Not many people use it, but there's a few of us that do. USC Mindful.
Thank you so much, Lee. And I just really could not agree more with you that this practice of gratitude is, I almost think of it as the fifth Brahma Vihara. It is such a powerful practice for gladdening the heart, and it's such a reliable place to go to get some uplift. Whatever else is going on, when I tune myself towards gratitude, and there's always something to be grateful for, it can really shift my mood. Sometimes I might be in a place of despair. But yeah, I'm just thinking last night, actually, I was in a place of a little bit of despair because I'm having a really hard time with a friend, and feeling a little despairing that we're going to be able to bridge our differences. And then another friend texted me, and they were just like, OMG, you got to go out and look at the moon. And this is fall this morning, and I was just like, I just got myself up and went out and looked at the moon, and I was just so grateful. It was so beautiful. I was so glad that my friend texted me to remind me, just go look at the moon. So simple, but it was like, it completely shifted my mood from this place of despair to a place of gratitude. And it just doesn't take very much to do that. And this practice of gratitude is so powerful. So, yeah, thank you, Lee. If we had another hour, we would do just a whole, segment on gratitude. Anyone else in our Zoom family? Oh, all right, Morgan.
I just really wanted to thank you and my Zoom dyad partner for this, for both practices, and especially for that Metta practice. That was just really sweet, and yeah, it was really powerful and really healing just to receive that Metta and be able to share it back. And that was my first time sort of doing such a direct Metta with a single other person, and it was really a powerful practice. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Morgan. Yeah, thank you for being here. And yes.
Could you read the Lama Raza Owens quote you did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was so profound.
Here we go. So Lama Raj says, grief is us trying to figure out who and what we are after something has changed.
That's good.
Yeah. I know we were trying to not talk about the Queen, but it's like I think right now the entire UK is like trying to figure out who and what they are after something really big has changed. Well, yeah, what's going to happen there? I mean, something will happen. Something will happen.
There won't be another Queen for a while.
Yeah. Other shares?
I just want to say I really appreciate the phrase you've used repeatedly, and that is the gladdening of the heart.
Mm.
I think that's a point here.
Mm-hmm.
Gladdening of the heart.
Yeah, I feel like that's a phrase I learned from Marina Weissman. When I think into those words, I feel like it came from Marina. So I want to bring her in. She talks a lot about gladdening the heart. And it's, just really, it's a lot of the practice is about choice. And it's about making the choice that we're going to incline our attention in this direction. And then there's so much benefit. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for coming in person. I'm just exhausted with all the mask on, mask off. It's, we're too toxic, we're not. And I'm just very happy to see you, hear you in person. It's great.
Yes. It's so good to practice together with our actual bodies in the room and including everyone on Zoom. And it's so good that we also have that option, And there's something about having our nervous systems together as we practice this. I have really missed that. So whenever I do have the invitation to be in person, I really take that invitation.
Thank you for spending the day with us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure and a delight to be with you all. Yes. And we are moving into our closing. I'm going to invite us just to take a few minutes as we're closing to have one last bit of practice together in silence. So just taking a few minutes in silence together to come back to our practice, come back to ourselves. I want to offer one quick gratitude practice as we're closing. So I invite you to, if this is comfortable for you, to take your hands, and we're going to just rub our hands together a little bit, just generate a little bit of warmth there. And then we can stop and just hold your hands kind of near each other. You might feel some tingling or some energy there. Just noticing that energy. And then we're going to take that energy and we're going to face our palms down towards the earth, letting this energy extend towards the earth and bringing to mind one thing that we're grateful for, maybe a couple things that we're grateful for to the earth for. And I'm really noticing my gratitude for the sun and the warm weather, and also feeling gratitude to the fog coming in today, cooling us off a little bit, and for the yummy breakfast I had this morning. So just a few things. You might think up a few things of your own. And extending towards the sky, and gratitude that we have. And we also already mentioned the sun, which was really more of a sky thing. I'll mention that again. And extending some gratitude for birds that I've seen today. And bringing our hands out into the circle And offering gratitude to Sangha community here, for everyone who's shown up, for the support of practicing together, sharing, and then finally bringing our hands in towards ourselves, extending to our own bodies, and offering something that we're grateful for to ourselves. I'm just thinking of showing up, holding space. We may be grateful for the efforts of getting here and practicing. That little practice is from a kind of a therapeutic school called Generative Somatics. And I want to check in with Jeff and see, do you have any announcements or?
I do have a couple of announcements, yes. There are a couple of volunteer opportunities available. We need hosts to bring sweets and yummies on Sundays. And you can talk to Cass about that. And also we need more volunteers to help with the Zoom part of the program, the setup and take down. And you can talk to me or Grisha or Cass. And the other thing I want to talk about is dana. The issue of dana is, as you know, in Pali, it means generous giving. And in Asia, it's the way that the monks survived. That's where the tradition started. But it's also considered a very spiritual practice, and generosity is the first of the 10 perfections of Buddhism. And I like to think of it as, it's regenerative, and it goes around. But I'd like to invite everyone to contribute what they can. We'll have a bowl out here, and to honor how you value the teachings today from René, and how they've affected your life. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. It's, this is all, it is a great pleasure to me to be in this relationship of generosity, that I can come here and really give freely of the teachings and of my time and energy, and then, inviting you all into also that relationship and of generosity. And again, this brings us back to gratitude. There's generosity and gratitude. And it is another way to be gladdening the heart, is this practice of generosity. And, the Buddha said it's like we can, this piece of generosity, it's like good at the beginning, middle, and end. We can be anticipating our generosity. We can then experience our generosity in the actual giving, and then we can reflect back on our generosity. So it is like gives to us 3 times over. So really appreciating any generosity that you can offer today. I'm going to dedicate the merit of our time together. So just inviting us to touch back into our awareness, our bodies, maybe reflecting on what we've learned and received today, and really recognizing the goodness of our practice, and recognizing the goodness of cultivating these heart practices and qualities, knowing that we're creating this goodness for ourselves and our own experience, and also that the goodness of these practices really ripples out in our lives. It's going to touch those who we're in close relationship with, and friends and partners, children, parents, our community. It's going to ripple out to people that we might never meet, or never know about. They will benefit from our practice of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. There may be effects of our practices that go generations in the future. There may be effects of our practice that help to heal our ancestral line. We do not know all of the effects, but we know that we've generated a lot of goodness today. And so offer it out. Offer to share this goodness with all who need it. And that includes ourselves. Knowing that there is so much suffering in our world right now, may the benefits of our practice be like a healing rain on fiery earth, and sending out our good wishes. May all beings everywhere be safe and protected. May they be in good health in body, mind, and spirit as much as is possible. May all beings be well cared for. May they have their basic needs met. May all beings know peace and ease. May all beings be held in kindness and compassion. May they know joy and happiness and the causes of happiness. And may all beings everywhere be free. Thank you so much for being here today and all your practice. Thank you for inviting me and welcoming me into this space. It's really been a pleasure to be with everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.